Thank you. Okay, let's get it started. Thank you everyone for joining the session on the PMO lifecycle, building, running, shutting down, and evolving a PMO for long-term success. Welcome everyone, and thank you, Bill, for joining and sharing your knowledge about this very important, and I would also say a sensitive topic, because when Bill and I were talking about the topic of today, we definitely agree that there are many speakers talking about how to build PMO, how to set up PMO, how to start a PMO. But starting PMO is just one part of the process. And there always my next question as a coach to the organization is, so, okay, you settled a PMO. So now what? Now, definitely, we need to run it, and it requires different skills from the leaders to do this, and maybe different directions. But running consistently on the same pace is also like one piece of work, but just running is not enough. Everything in the world is evolving, so PMO needs to be evolved as well. And I've been looking for other presentations and speakers, and unfortunately, I couldn't find much about the evolution of PMO. And that's how we came up with the topic that we need to combine three components: building, running, and evolving. And on this note, I'm passing to Bill, and I'm
Perfect.
excited to listen and learn.
Yeah, and thank you very much. And for folks in the U.S., happy Thanksgiving. So let's jump into it. Like you said, we've been talking about this for a while, so I'm going to jump in and let's get going. All right. First thing I would love to cover is, who am I? So Bill Dow, so 30 plus years of hands-on experience in the PMO and project management space. I actually managed my first project in 1991 and my first PMO in 2003 at AT&T Wireless. So I run a very large, complicated PMO today. And last year I was nominated and won the 2003 PMO Global Influencer Award. So that was a huge honor to be recognized. I've been a speaker all around the world. In November 2023, the PMO conference I keynoted in Edinburgh, Scotland, which was amazing. 2018, I was in London and at a PMO conference there. I've spoken all over North America: Vegas, Toronto, San Diego, Minneapolis. So just a huge honor. Also been a 7-time author, so I've written 7 books in PMO and project management. And I have about 24 or 25 ebooks in those 2 areas as well, PMO and project management. You can go get those at buildoutpmptraining.com. Okay, so we've got a pretty packed agenda. We're going to cover a lot of things. So we're going to talk about the PMO leaders' roles and responsibilities. We'll talk about how to build a PMO, how to run a PMO, how to evolve a PMO for long-term success, and we'll wrap it up. Sound good? Awesome. Okay, so first thing I want to cover is a question for you. The question is, are you ready for the role? So as we were coming on today, some of the folks said, hey, I'm not sure necessarily how to build the role. I haven't had a chance to build this role. So the question is, are you ready for the role? Right? If you get a chance to build a PMO and run a PMO, are you ready? What do you have to do? So that's where I wanted to start. I really wanted to talk about the roles and responsibilities of a PMO leader, PMO manager. And when we think about building a PMO and running a PMO, what are the key things that you're going to have to do? Right. So we've seen job descriptions before. You can go to LinkedIn and Glassdoors and all the various sites to see what the job description is, but what's it really like? And that's what I wanted to cover today, because I really wanted to get into what's it like running a PMO. Okay, not all PMOs are created equal. There's no question, right? Not all PMO leaders and managers are created equal as well. So they all come in from different angles. You could be a superstar project manager and your executives say, it's you can come run this PMO. And that is something that we see a lot. And sometimes those skill sets do not translate. So I certainly wasn't ready to run the PMO when I started back in 2003. It was like 21 years ago. I was not ready to run that PMO. I stumbled my way through it, And as we go through today's presentations, I'm going to share a lot of lessons learned and a lot of things that I've learned along the way. But as a PMO leader, you need to adapt and adjust your skills. So what I've done, just kind of a fun graphic here, but what I've done is I put 11 components of a PMO leader. Okay, from helper to advisor to teacher to mentor. So I'll just pause there for a second and have you look at the various things that you're going to have to do across this role on a day-to-day basis. And these are skills I use every day, from an HR manager to negotiation to communications to motivator, auditing. I audit programs and projects all the time. I teach, I mentor, I advise, right? So these are the skill sets that I have to use as a PMO leader on a day-to-day basis. So these are the skill sets you will have to use as well. So the question is, are you ready for the role? Right? And do you think about those skills and do you think about those things that you have to do on a day-to-day basis? And are there skills across those 11 areas that you will have to get better at? And really, only you can do that self-reflection. Only you can really go, I really need to be a better motivator or a better negotiator. Or, you know what, I've not been an HR manager before. That may be a skill set where I need to get some training. Does that make sense? So I wanted to start there because I will get into building, we'll get into running, but there's some key roles and responsibilities that you will use on a day-to-day basis that is sometimes not often covered, and I wanted to cover those 11 areas. Okay, perfect. Let's keep going. Let's get into building a PMO. So shifting topics, these steps I'm going to cover here, I have used across 10 PMOs in 4 different companies. Okay, these are rock solid. Let me jump into them. So here are the steps to build a PMO. Okay, it starts with the big why, right? It goes to a project schedule, executive support and org structure. We're going to talk about that. Forming key peer relationships. Okay, and those are the ones that we're going to cover in a little bit more detail, but I wanted to give you that, and you obviously screenshot it, and we can get you the presentation. There'll be a recording, but these are the steps that I use to build 10 PMOs across 4 different companies. I would maybe tweak, I would maybe adjust a little bit, but these are rock solid, and they're all aligned to my book and what I've used countless times. Okay. So we're going to go into detail on the top 4 you'll see in the big red circle. I'm not going to drain all those steps, right? We'll cover those. I have other materials and webinars and books and all that stuff. But as a treat today, I am going to cover things I have never covered before. So you guys are going to see some stuff that I've never covered before. I wanted to use and put out special for this presentation. Let's dive in. Okay. Before I begin, though, I think many people rush into building a PMO without understanding the why. Many times, executives will ask you to build a PMO with no idea of the problems they're trying to solve. They believe a PMO will magically solve everything, right? Insert magic here. That is not the case. Okay. So I want to start with the why. But before we think about the why, right? You have to understand why you're doing the why. So what is the why? The why is what your executives, your customers, and leadership want your PMO to solve. Okay. If you go too far into building your PMO without understanding the why, you're going to struggle. I can tell you, you're going to struggle if you don't know why you're building this PMO. Okay. Make sense? All right. And I can see the chat. So I love this table. I absolutely love this table. I use it all the time. It's simple and it's an effective table. So all we're doing in this table is capturing the business challenges your customers, your leaders, your executives feel your current PMO or your current project execution is not doing, and they want you to fix it. Okay. So who did you talk to? When did you talk to them? What did they say? What was their business challenge? And any special notes about that conversation. Now, this doesn't have to be a table that you put out there and is publicly available. This could be just your interview notes table, but it's simple, it's effective, and we are, that's just threw me that AI thing. But here's an example. Okay, so here's what it looks like. Obviously, just directional, but here's what we said. Bob Smith, okay? Your PMs do not communicate status very well. I rarely see status reports, and when I do, it doesn't have relevant information. I have no idea what's going on with my project. Okay? No, Bob was really upset during this conversation. Okay, now, do you need to get that out publicly? No, but are these great notes to track exactly what they said about the why of the PMO, right? Mary Jones, your governance process. Kath Holt, your budget management process. And it goes on and on and on. You're capturing notes around business challenges and you're really discovering the why. Okay. So, why is this why so important? Well, the information is critical in defining the why of your PMO. Okay. You will use this why to formulate your service offerings for your PMO. Okay. So you'll start to compile this information from executives, from leaders, from customers, from peers, and you'll start seeing themes, right? We don't communicate status really well. Governance issues, budget issues, whatever the case may be, you're going to start seeing themes as you talk to more and more people. Okay, those themes and those challenges will define your service offerings and define the why of your PMO. Does that make sense? I want to make sure everyone's tracking here. Can you guys see how valuable this small but effective table is? And I've used it for years and years, and it's just, and I'm still using it. It's just a tremendous tool to help capture what the perception of the PMO is, or perception of program and project management is for your organization. And therefore you can adjust and fix and tweak. Make sense? Okay. The next thing I wanted to cover was in the why. So we have the why. So the next thing is a project schedule. So I do have the schedule free. You can go get to build out PMP training. You can navigate. You can find it. But I just want to look at this a little bit. So this is a free schedule I put up. It's part of the book. But again, there's 543 lines of detail of building a PMO. Okay, it talks about how you grow your skills, executive support, how to run PMO assessment, how to build a PMO, how to run a PMO. All those details are great. You'll see that it's aligned to the chapters of the book, but it's something that's constantly out there to give you those details on building a schedule for your PMO. So when you're building your PMO, you have to have a schedule. But why? Why do you have to have a schedule? Well, why are they so important? Because the key step in this process is understanding how long things are going to take. Rarely PMOs are built overnight. We've seen years where PMOs it takes to mature, right? So it's just not something that you can do overnight. And your executives will keep asking you, how long is it going to take? How long is it going to take? We got to get better. We got to get better. Having a schedule will allow you to have that defined conversation. Okay, so keeping a good project schedule will help you through those tough conversations with your executives on how long it's going to take. So strongly suggest you build a schedule out so you keep your building components aligned and continue driving hitting those dates. Okay, so one of the things I really want to stress in, and it's something that will come up in one of the challenges is the importance of executive support and the org structure. Okay, so when you're building a PMO and running a PMO, having an executive support and where you fall and what your org structure, your PMO looks like are critical and they go hand in hand. Okay, so when we talk about executive support, I can't stress enough. If you don't have executive support or you start to lose executive support, your PMO could be in trouble. Okay. I can't stress that enough. Without executive support, do not build your PMO. Dead stop. This is not something that you can do grounds up. It's never going to happen. I've ran 10 PMOs, and I can tell you if you don't have leadership support, you will struggle to be successful. Okay, let's look into a process that I have seen and experienced multiple times. Okay, we're going to get a little audience participation. So, why is executive support so important? Well, PMOs come and go, right? And as a PMO manager, you need to be flexible working in an environment where your PMO can shut down at any time. Okay. I'm sorry, it's a reality. Your PMO can shut down at any time. So let me walk you through the PMO cycle. PMO starts up, PMO runs 3 to 5 years, which seems to be the same length of time that executives stay in their roles. PMO shuts down. Something major happens, project goes bad, program goes bad, big disaster happens in a company, a new executive comes in. Guess what happens? We need a PMO. And the cycle goes again and again and again. So let me ask you a question. Let's do a little audience participation. I can see the chat. So fire up that chat button. All I want you to do is in that chat button is type seen before. Have you seen the PMO cycle before in your organization? And let's look at the results. Seen before, yes or no? Seen before, yes. Have you seen that before? No. Okay, Norrin. Yes. No. Seeing some good yeses, good nos. Good. All right. I like the no's. Yeses, nos. Yeah. So we got a mixed bag here, which is awesome. So I'm telling you, it will happen, right? It will happen. So just hold on. And that's part of that flexibility of that role. So, all right, you guys keep going with the chats and I'll just keep going here. So the next consideration from the PMO structure perspective, which I believe goes hand in hand with the executive support, is the org structure. And there's two components to the org structure. One, where does the PMO sit in the company structure? And two, what does your PMO structure look like? Will you have managers? Will you have leads? Will you have admin staff? Both play a big role in building and running a PMO. Okay. So, where do you sit in your PMO, in your company structure? In the first example, are you 2 levels from the CIO? Are you 1 level from the CIO? Are you 3 levels from the CIO? That CIO could be any top position at your company, right? It could be the president, it could be the owner, it doesn't really matter. But the lower and lower you go, you get less and less attention and support from leadership. Okay, I want you to understand that. The lower you are in the company structure, you're going to get less and less support. It just happens over 21 years of doing this. It happens the lower you are. So you need to understand where you're going to sit. And at one company, you could be 1 or 2 levels from the top. In other companies, you could be much, much lower. And I've been in both. Okay. So now you understand that you can fall in different levels, right? What does your org structure look like? So the best way to understand how to do that is with an org chart, and they're all going to have same features. They're going to have roles, and so I thought it'd be fun to kind of put together some. So in the PMOs I've ran, I've had one PMO had 30 FTEs, and then I had 10 FTEs and vendors, and then I had 15, and then I had one, then I had 15 again, another one with 15, another one with one with two, one with one with 35. So you'll see pictures, you'll see names, you'll see some various org structures for the PMOs I've read. So obviously, everyone likes seeing where they sit in the PMO. So just getting a PMO org structure out there. And I've had a lot of conversations with PMO leaders, and they often don't build their own org structures. And I said, you got to do that. That is a key thing to keep everyone connected to the organization. Does that make sense? Awesome. Okay. So one of the things I wanted to cover in building the PMO too is I don't see much covered anywhere, and it's been a huge lessons learned, and that is peer relationships. So if you don't have great peer relationships, so at the director level, at the manager level, at the manager director level, if you don't have great relationships, your PMO will struggle, right? We often see, oh, sorry, I have this AI companion. We often see that there's a lot of disconnects that happen if you're not aligned to the peers and some managers, and depends where you are and what level you're at. But these peer relationships are really critical. Okay. So, where do you start? Where do you start building these peer relationships? I wanted to give you some best practices. One, remember the why table? Did you ask them their issues? Did you resolve their issues and report back to them? Right? That why table will be great in building and formulating peer relationships. You've got peers telling you the whys, telling you the complaints, and then you're solving those complaints, setting up regular one-on-ones with them. I can't stress enough, continue that conversation, continue that flow of information back and forth between, what they're seeing about the PMO and program and project execution, and then what you're seeing. Don't make this one-sided. Don't just take all this feedback in. You also, if you're working with their organization, you want to be able to share your concerns and your stuff as well. So you want that to be both going both ways. You also want to ensure your programs, your project, your portfolio managers are all meeting with that peer as well. So you're building great relationships from that perspective. So I can't stress enough, like a project manager working with some of your peers that are running their projects, and then you having that relationship and them having that relationship just really completes that nice circle and keeps the information flowing with the peers. So one of the things is I really stress building a PMO, running a PMO, having that peer relationship. Make sense? Awesome. Okay. So let's go to that big list now. Okay. So back to the steps to running a PMO, and I'm just going to go from five, right? So five was selecting your PMO type, directive, controlling, agile, whatever the case might be. Six, PMO staples, your charter, your budget, your service offerings. And again, all the way to 13. These are the steps that you will do to build your PMO, right? We often get the question of challenges and milestones, and we can get you these slides or you can take a quick screenshot. But what are some of the challenges, right? I've been doing it for a long time. I want to give you some challenges. Number one, right out of the gate, and I won't drain the slide, but executive support. So, what can you do? What's some mitigation strategies, right? I often talk about having multiple executives, understanding the value, understanding what your PMO will bring. So, having just one executive is not a good strategy. You have to have multiple. And then you go lack of resources, right? Too many projects, lack of strong governance. These are the top 7 challenges and mitigations that I've seen building a PMO. Make sense? Awesome. Okay. Now what we want to do is we want to pivot to running a PMO, right? So we've built it. Now we need to run it. Building a PMO is one of the best times and the greatest times that you will have in this role. Running a PMO is one of the hardest times. As it was said earlier, PMO leaders, we don't call out the differences enough. There's a building component, but there's also a running component. And there's a very big difference, right? It's the greatest time in the world when you're building a PMO. You get money, you get staff, you get everything set up, right? The world is you, whatever you want, you get it. When you're running the PMO and you're moving into day-to-day operations, that's where you're dealing with all the problems, the program problems, the project problems, the portfolio problems. So let's get into running a PMO. All right, so there's some key things that you want to consider when running a PMO that many PMO leaders don't talk about, don't put out there, and I want to cover to make sure you guys understand what it's really like. So, what are the top components you need to run a PMO? There's a build aspect that you're going to constantly be doing while running your PMO. We'll get into that. What are your key PMO meetings, right? What are the key things that you need to do to drive your PMO on a day-to-day basis? I call it the rhythm of business. What's your ROB, your PMO's ROB? And then what about setting up times to review PMO data? So if you've got 40, 50, 100 projects, 150 projects, whatever the case may be, how do you, running your PMO, get in front of that data, right? And that's a key component to running a successful PMO is understanding the data of the programs and projects. Now, depending on how big and how complex your PMO is, you still need to run and understand the projects, but you're not going to be able to go deep. One of the key components of a PMO leader is staying wide, not going deep. Only going deep if you have to go deep, but it's not scalable. If you're running a PMO of 100 or 150 projects, how can you possibly go deep across those projects? You just can't, right? But therefore, you have to set up weekly reviews of the PMO data so you can stay on top of that, right? So let's understand the top components to build for running a PMO. So here are the top 11 components that need building in the running stage of your PMO. Okay, so you need to build these while you're running a PMO. And I just took an easy example, which most of you, I'm sure, are at directive PMO. Okay, so you need color conditions, red, yellow, green. Imagine having 10, 15 project managers in your organization, and they all had different red conditions, different yellow conditions, different green conditions. You can't. You have to define the color conditions and make that a standard. Setting up a change request process, developing playbooks, and I'll just give you a minute to look at these 11 components. Okay. So these are the 11 things. So you built your PMO. Now we're running and you have to constantly be building. Okay. And we're going to get into number 10 coming up here. Build the PMO improvement processes. Okay. So you're not going to build these things out until you're running the PMO, and you're going to need to see what tweaks and what adjustments. And I'm going to give you some examples. And then number 11 is continuous support management and the value conversation. So what do I mean by that? Basically, management's going to be asking and leadership's going to be asking, what's the value of the PMO? What are you doing? What are you delivering? And you're constantly selling, you're constantly marketing all the great work your PMO is doing. Okay, so let's keep going. So what I wanted to call out too, and again, it's a component of running a large PMO or running a PMO, are the key meetings. So the rhythm of business, right? So for example, if you're running a directive PMO, number 6, program and project specific meetings will be critical. You will have to attend program and project steering committees, kickoffs, phase gates. Depending on your org, number 5, PMO people meetings. Depending on your budget responsibilities, number 2, financial meetings. right? So there's a lot of factors here of what the meetings you'll need to set up for your organization. They'll be critical in the process of running your PMO. Does that make sense? Okay. So again, want to know what's really like running a PMO? I just did an inventory of my current meetings, okay, that I run in my current PMO, and I have 38 meetings a week, right? So I wanted to prepare you for what it's like. Do you guys want to see what my calendar looks like? All right, let's jump into that. Here's week one. Now, obviously, I blurred out the meetings for screenshot purposes, but do you see a lot of white space here? Do you see a lot of time where I'm not in a meeting and I actually can build and mature and grow the PMO? See a lot of white space there? Okay, here's another week. What's it like running a PMO, right? I'm not trying to scare you. And obviously, every company is going to be different, but I've ran multiple PMOs across multiple companies, and this directionally is what it's like, right? So the
Your
question
lunch,
is, that's
dude.
sustainable for me?
What time is your lunch?
Yeah, exactly. I don't have lunch. Yeah. So is the question is though, is that sustainable, right? Well, that's it is what it is, and but that's what it's like, right? It is a very busy job when you're running a large, complicated PMO. So the other thing that we talked about is how do we stay in front of the data? Right? So what do we do? What's that point where we can continue to look at the data? You've got a large set of programs and projects running. You have to set up time and you have to set up dashboards and reports, right? So time data, budget data, risk data, issue data, right? So setting up a series of dashboards and reports to view your PMO data. You want to drive these meetings weekly, right? You want to be on top of your data. You want to look at your red projects and what do their risks and issues and actions look like, right? Your yellow projects. So this is just one of the many dashboards we've set up, but constantly looking at issues and risks and resources, right? Lessons learned data, survey data, right? So it constantly goes and you're constantly staying on top of your data. And then you're helping the program and project managers course correct where possible. Okay. Make sense? Okay. So the other component of running a PMO, which I think is critical, and you can only do it in the running stages because you have to let your PMO go for a bit. But I have a process called the process improvement projects, and I've got webinars and ebooks and all that stuff under that. But what do we mean by that, right? What do we mean by PMO process improvement projects? Well, to answer that, you have to start with your PMO type. Okay. So you need to focus on improving an agile PMO. That's going to be very different than a director PMO or an enterprise PMO or a supportive PMO, right? So that means your process improvement projects are going to be different as well, right? So you may have a product backlog grooming process improvement project, and you may have a budget project process improvement project, and they may or may not be applicable based on the PMO type. So, what are they in general? What are they? And what is the why? Why do we have to do that? I strongly believe that everything in a PMO has to be consistent, repeatable to be able to scale. When you're running PMOs of 100 projects, 50 projects, or 200 projects, there's got to be a repeatability, a consistency, and a scalability to what you're doing. Again, imagine 15, 20 project managers running around with different red color conditions, different yellow color conditions, but working with the same customers. How well do you think that would go? So, for a long term success of a PMO, you have to think about consistency, scalability, and repeatability across the projects. So process improvement projects, I wanted to give you maybe three different areas to cover. So from a governance perspective, you've got governance in your PMO. Most PMOs have governance, or that's the place that they land. Your intake process. That could be a process improvement project, your scoring process. How do we score projects today? Your prioritization process. How do we, prioritize our projects today? Could we tweak there? Right? Resource management, governance tools, frameworks. These are the process improvement projects that you will make to your governance component of your PMO. You have to have a governance, you have to run it for a bit, and then you'll tweak and adjust where applicable. Okay. PM processes and improvement projects. What do they look like? Your risk management process, could that be approved? Right? Do you guys have that nailed? Do your project scheduling process? How's that going? Is that working great? Are all your schedules exactly the same? Is everyone following that process across Smart Sheets and Project and Asana and Jira? Right? Do you got a great handle on your project budgeting? Could you nail that? Could you do a little bit better in how you do your project budgeting process? Right? So that are some process improvement projects. What about tools, right? Projects, smart sheets, right? We talk about Workday. Are people using work management tools the same way? So these are just some of the ways of continuing to improve your PMO. Once you've built it, you're running it for a bit, and now you want to turn that maturity dial. So running a PMO is very difficult. I can't stress enough. Your needs will be different based on your organization, your company's leadership, but it's a very, very difficult role. And you just need time and role to continue to do better or to continue to really grow and mature in that role. And you want to keep turning that dial wherever you can. Okay, so we've built the PMO, we're running the PMO, we're improving the PMO, but how do you evolve the PMO, right? So how do you keep evolving it? So final topic of the day, how do you evolve the PMO? Okay, and it's great, and it's a great topic because it's one that's fast changing. Someone's said that a little bit earlier. How do we keep maturing and growing it? So how do we move that PMO forward? Now, the first thing is it's going to be different from company to company. I can't stress enough, right? Your leadership will also drive a lot of that, how you evolve your PMO, right? So, your leadership and the direction and where they want to take the company, where they want to take the organization, where they want to take things forward, your PMO will have to adapt and change based on where they're heading, right? And you may or may not be in the leadership program or leadership seat. And that again is where you sit in the organization. But company to company, leadership to leadership, it's going to be different. So what I did is I really put together a nice framework here for you to follow. So when you want to evolve your PMO, you want to be constantly asking the why question. Keep that table going, keep filling in that table, keep addressing as you mature and tweak, keep filling in that why table. And then you're going to fill in the pain points. So we talked about what are the pain points of your PMO. When I gave you the top 7, you're going to want to constantly be adjusting those, right? So continue with process improvement projects. You want to keep turning that dial. You're going to get a why. The why will become a process improvement project. You want to start expanding your tools. AI is coming fast and furious. I've got a webinar coming up on AI. PMO tools, project management tools, governance tools, budgeting tools, right? You want to keep turning the dial on tools, and you want to evolve your PMO from a tooling perspective. We talked about agile tools, right? Jira and all the various Azure DevOps, all the various agile tools out there. So you want to keep evolving from that. You want to build out PMO people programs, right? We never talked about the buddy system and mentoring programs and leadership programs, but you have a whole organization of people. How do you move their dial? How do you keep growing their careers? That's your responsibility as a PMO leader. You remember the 11 things that we said? One of those was HR manager. And so you want to keep thinking about how do you grow the careers of the people in your PMO, and you do that through PMO people programs. And then finally, you want to continue to reach out and connect with your executives to keep supporting and driving the value of PMO and showing that they're connected, you're aligned to strategy, and they see the great work your PMO is doing, right? You'll continue to evolve and focus these 6 key areas. And if you do that, you'll be adjusting and tweaking for long-term PMO success. Make sense? Awesome. Okay, let's wrap up. I know we're coming to time here. We've covered a lot. Let me just summarize in 3 quick things. We cover many different areas. We talked about the components to build a PMO. We talked about the components to run a PMO. We said there's components that you have to build in the running stage. You're not going to build these in the building stage. You want to build it, get it going, and then start building out the running, right? There's components in the run stage that don't make sense in the build stage. Okay. And so we call those out. And again, you can go find a lot of information up on my website. We talked about the PMO type and how that makes a difference. We talked about the org structure. We talked about the rhythm of business and constantly being in front of the data so you can help course correct programs and projects, right? That's a critical component to being successful in this role. And so we talked about some of the challenges, and we also talked about how to evolve it, constantly looking at the why, building out people programs, constantly doing process improvement projects, right? So these are the components across building, running, and evolving your PMO that should set you up for long-term success in this role as a PMO leader. All right, with that, I will close it out. Thank you all for joining today. Here's my information, buildout.publishingllc.com or buildoutpmptraining.com. I want to thank you all and open it up for questions, but thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Bill. It was a very insightful presentation, even for me, despite I've been coaching PMOs and agile PMOs for a while already. So it was very well structured. So thank you again. I have a few questions, but I will give the floor to the audience in case someone else has it. And we have, again, as I said before, a very intimate audience. So just feel free to unmute yourself and have a conversation.
Well, Cedric asked about an AI agent to help you during these tasks. I'm not sure exactly what task, but tell me what AI agent, Cedric, you think could do some of these tasks.
I think Cedric dropped already.
Oh, okay. Do anyone know what AI agent could do these tasks? I'm not sure.
I think it was
thinking, sorry, I was thinking of standardization.
Sorry, say that again.
Yeah, I was thinking of maybe standardization.
Oh, standardization. Yeah, potentially. Yeah.
I would say brainstorming. If we brainstorm with AI in the beginning and then take whatever they as a starting point. If you don't know where to start from, you just brainstorm with AI, ChatGPT or whatever, and then whatever they propose, you just take this as a starting point to either to evolve this thing or to discard and find out your direction.
Yeah, I think the why table is critical in that though, right? I think sitting down and saying, hey, what problems are you experiencing? I've done it across several PMOs now. And I say, hey, John, tell me a little bit about, your project execution, or what are your problems that you're seeing? And hey, you guys don't do status reports, or there's no weekly status meetings, or whatever the case may be. And then what you do is you theme those up and you make service offerings, right? You don't have status reports. Okay, now we have a service offering of dashboard and reports, and one of the report is a status report, a common status report across our PMO. So I get AI, I get everyone's excited about AI, but there's just a human component of talking to someone and listening to someone, because these are what they are really experiencing, their pain points as they're trying to get their programs and projects executed, and your team's doing the execution.
Hey Bill, this is
Yeah.
Victoria.
Hi.
So For me, I think AI coming into the PMO is really great. Of course, you can't take out the human component of things. However, I was thinking that using AI as a way to compare, like, if the standards are up to date, like if there's a policy written and we're trying to find out if the standard measures up versus what the company has versus like the industry standard, maybe for example, standards that PMI puts out there that could also deliver results. Based on those results, it would help with seeing what the differences are, and maybe that creates an opportunity to change things around or upgrade things or even retrain the project managers, be more inclusive in the governance. This is just my idea and my thought. What do you
Yeah.
think of that?
Yeah, I mean, there's some good points. We have to think about hallucinations. We have
Mm-hmm.
to think about what kind of AI is set up across your company to be able to go and pull those details in. Do you have are you a Microsoft shop and you've got AI across all your SharePoint sites in your OneDrive? Okay, and what kind of privacy issues do you have? So there's a lot of components to that. I think directionally you're spot on. We will get there,
Mm-hmm.
but think about what a company would have to do to set up the privacy, set up their OneDrive, set up the SharePoint to allow AI to be open to everything.
Okay.
And so if someone in a policy department writes a policy document and puts it on their SharePoint and it's still draft or something, and AI goes and pulls this in, but this thing's draft, and you in the project are trying to make a decision based on a policy that AI has come back to, right?
Mm-hmm.
Think about that complexity. I'm as
Yeah.
excited about AI as possible, or as anyone is, but I'm really worried about all these types of things that people are not thinking through
Oh,
that has to be set up, and we're just not there yet.
I absolutely agree. I think to narrow down my thought process, instead of it being so vague, it would be to already established and confirmed policies. And it would be a compare and contrast rather than asking AI to create a policy. It would be compare this policy versus this. And that way it extracts maybe differences
Yeah,
or
I love that.
gaps. So thank you for helping me
Yeah, I
narrow
love
that
that.
thought.
Yeah, that's a great, yeah, great.
Thank
Sunny
you.
had a question. Yeah.
Bill, my question was, so in my previous experience at least, PMOs worked in silos somewhat. So let's say like the engineering would have like their own PMO, and then let's say marketing would have their own PMO.
Yeah.
What is I guess like the best strategy to kind of combine individual PMOs into one like centralized
Yeah,
organizational?
enterprise
Mhm.
PMO.
Yeah.
So that's called enterprise PMO. And what that's going to do is it's going to align on some really key things: color conditions, right? Project methodologies, tools, right? So some of those things an enterprise will combine. An enterprise PMO will take all the division level PMOs and will roll that information up. Now, a lot of times they just become policies and they become this policing, if you would. So you don't want that to happen. You want them to be valuable. But that's ultimately what you're going to need to do, because an executive is going to want one color condition, right, across all their projects. Engineering can't have a red and marketing have a red. And I know they're different types of projects, but there's got to be thresholds that people across a company are heading towards.
Gotcha. Thank you. That helps.
Other thoughts or questions? Did that resonate well with you? Was it hit the key points that we were looking for across building and evolving and running? It's a tough job. It's not an easy job by no means.
But it was a great presentation, Bill. It
Oh,
was
thank you.
awesome. And then I noticed also that you included other, approaches. And because I remember that previously in the PMBOK up until 6th edition, if I'm not mistaken, they were just talking about directive, supportive,
Yeah.
and controlling, right?
Yeah.
And then now you're bringing other perspectives that are, it's something that I was kind of questioning somewhat, and then it's good that you brought it up in case of the for example, the enterprise PMO, um, other other approaches that a PMO may have.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, there's a question in the chat. In the build stage, I think it's important to address and agree with management what budget will be necessary to annually support the run phase, people, tools, etc. What's your experience in addressing the issue? I love this. So one of the things I've talked about a lot is you really have to treat your PMO like you're running an organization. So your PMOs like you're running finance, your PMOs like you're running marketing, your PMOs like you're running IT. So finance, HR, IT, marketing, they all have budgets to run their organization, right? And so when we think about PMOs just being a bunch of programs and projects, you lose that concept of running an organization, right? What about the 35 people, 50 people, whatever in the what about the 10 people in the PMO that need they need to go to conferences, they need training budget, they need, those types of things, right? There's a budget component to that. So when you build out service offerings, and you say these are all the things that we do, and this organization called the PMO, which is the O of the PMO, you then talk about what budget you need. So I need a budget for all the tools for the PMO. I have project and WBS and Azure DevOps, and I've got all these tools. You need a budget. I need a budget for my staff for training and conferences and that type of thing, and merit increases and stock and all that. So it's a really key component because there's this building, right? Let's get this thing in place, but the running is no different than running marketing, IT, HR, and there's a people side and a budget component associated to that. Does that help? Yeah, perfect. Okay. So I draw the service offering thing. I've done this for a long time. I've done service offerings. There's ebooks. There's all sorts of presentations on that. And in this service offering, the bottom right-hand corner is programs and projects. It's always the bottom right-hand corner. And that's because people read from left to right. And I sell my PMO and I talk about my PMO as an organization. And we do this and we do this and we do this. Oh, but we also do programs and projects. And it's all the way down to the bottom right. So a new executive is going to go, oh, I didn't realize that's all the things you did. I said, yeah, I'm running an organization here. I'm not running a bunch of programs and projects. And strategically, I put it in the bottom right because of the way people read and because I can draw out the conversation to then get them to, oh, and we run programs and projects. Okay, very different than we just run programs and projects. Anything else? Any final questions before we wrap up? Great, thank you.
Time flies. It's been already an hour. I haven't
Oh,
noticed.
yeah. I have a question. I can't find the raise the hand. Okay, right at the time. What's the question? Put it in chat and I'll read it.
Or just unmute yourself, Kari, and speak up.
Yeah. Or you can just send me an email. I'll answer it.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Yeah. So I just wanted to know when you have enterprise, when you're working more in, how do you have the executives buy in to be able to make an enterprise PMO? I go into so many companies, and every different organization has a their own PMO or their own way of doing project management because of development or because they're using Agile. They want to
Yep.
be able to, you know, with their documents, streamline some of their documents. They don't want to follow all their governance guidelines and everything else. So what is your recommendation or some of the strategies that you've used to be able to help guide these companies into working towards an enterprise PMO strategy?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. We're over time for that answer, so please email me that question. But I'll give you the 10,000-foot level as we have to drop. What's the business problem you're trying to solve? What's the pain point that they're having that you're trying to solve with that? Because that can't be your idea. That can't be an off the street idea. There's got to be a pain point to say, what are we trying to solve by having an enterprise PMO? Right? What's the problem? What's the cost? What's the time? What's the lack of resource? You go with the pain point, and then your recommendation will be the enterprise. What are the benefits of an enterprise PMO? You're going to do this, 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 and this. But it has to be directly correlated to a pain point, or they're never going to solve it. They're never, ever going to want to change what they're doing. So it has to be a big enough pain point. And of course, you can email me and we can follow up and have additional conversations, but that's where I would go at the top of the hour. Great, perfect. And all my contact information is there, so definitely connect with me, and I appreciate it. So thank you.
Thank you, Bill, and thank you
Yep.
all. So you will get the recording via email since you registered, and I'm also going to publish this recording on the PMO community YouTube channel. So feel free to reach out to myself or to Bill if you have any further questions, and see you guys in our future events. And happy Thanksgiving, whoever is on stage.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.